welcome to this mini-series of the University of Law podcast, where we speak to our alumni to gain insight into their careers and how students can follow in their footsteps. Today, we're speaking to Leah Vaghela, who is a co-founder of My Solicitors. Their business model prioritises remote working and flexibility, and she's a specialist in employment law. Her clients have described her as refreshing, down-to-earth and compassionate. Leah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're delighted. Now, let's start there. Those words, that client feedback's so important, isn't it? But that particular feedback, refreshing, down to earth, compassionate, what do those words mean to you? And how do you incorporate that into your practice?
Yeah, so they mean a lot. And for us, it's not just another client that walks through the door. It's genuinely somebody that has come to us. They've got a massive problem and we genuinely care about them. And I think that then obviously comes across in how we deal with them. It's not just another, they're coming on the conveyor belt. We deal with the work that we need to deal with and then kind of send them out the door. We will deal with it from start to finish and ensure that they have the best service possible and make them feel like we care because we do. And we're there to help them in that situation, really. But yeah, the words are really kind from our clients.
And it's employment law specifically. So give us an idea of the day-to-day. I mean, what kind of cases are coming through your door?
At the moment, discriminations, it's everywhere at the moment. And I'm not saying it's not always kind of the employer's fault. It might be through another co-worker, another colleague, and the employer didn't necessarily appreciate it or see it. So it's not as if the employer's always allowing it. But particularly at the moment, disability discrimination is what I'm seeing a lot of. And working with those clients, it's really rewarding because they'll come to you at quite a difficult time. A lot of them might already be mentally, physically struggling. They come to you needing some advice, and actually we get them a really positive outcome. And it's really rewarding to us to see that because work is such a big part of everybody's life. It's work and home, isn't it? It's 50-50. So being able to give them a positive outcome and, make them go home and feel that actually they were being discriminated against and that they were right to pursue this gives them some comfort that they've done the right thing. And, it makes us feel good as well that we've helped them.
And how does that work for you then, sort of from that first conference onwards? What are you taking your clients through?
So really, it's kind of once they've come through the door, it's always a meeting with them because I think it's always really important to get the client in, actually have a conversation with them, meet them in person, and you understand a little bit more about them. They obviously understand a bit more about me and how we work. And then it's really just about letting them tell their story and what's happened, because I think sometimes with the larger firms as well, what I found is you're very time limited as to the time you can spend with them. And I don't think that should be the case. Actually, if they want to talk to you for an hour and a half, 2 hours, let them, because it's important to them. And actually something might come out in that conversation that you did need or you actually find really useful. From there, really, it's then depending on what the work is, what's needed. It could be tribunal or it could actually just be as simple as contacting the employer and notifying them of an issue.
So that's really interesting that actually you do need to make the time so that you can find that nugget at the end of a very long conference. Can you remember any examples of where you've maybe got an hour in and suddenly the client says something that makes your eyes light up?
Yeah, so an individual came to me, wasn't sure if they had a claim, but said, I'd really like to just chat to somebody about it. So I said, yeah, come in, let's have a chat. So we got a coffee, we sat down, we had a chat, and on the face of it, it didn't look like there was any claims there. So I explained how protected characteristics, everything like that works, and said, look, from what you're telling me, it doesn't seem like you fit that. And I explained what the 9 protected characteristics are. We were talking through it. And then they said, well, does it matter that I'm deaf in one ear? I said, right, okay. Now let's delve into this a little bit deeper. But because they was born with that, it wasn't necessarily a hindrance to them. It wasn't a disability. It was something that they'd lived with and they dealt with. But actually the problems that they were raising were all linked to this disability. They just didn't see it and couldn't see it, but knew that there was something unfair there. So under the Equality Act 2010, there's 9 protected characteristics. And what that means is if you have one of these certain characteristics, you may potentially be afforded protection under the Equality Act. Examples, sex, gender, pregnancy, maternity, disability. With disabilities, I say that's the main one, and this can be kind of physical or a mental impairment. It doesn't have to be obvious, and it's completely different to the medical definition. So you might think, well, medically, I don't see a consultant, I don't see a doctor, I don't go to a hospital, but that doesn't necessarily mean for employment law purposes that you're not disabled.
And what happened? What was the outcome?
So we went to tribunal and we won for that client in particular. And that was really, but I say we won, we actually settled 20 minutes before the hearing started. We still took it as a win. And it was really, really rewarding for the client to see that. But if I'd not took that initial, let's have a coffee, let's sit down and let's really kind of, dig deep and ask all these questions, we might not have got there.
And we've also said you're the co-founder of My Law Solicitors. Now, what inspired you to take the leap and start your own firm?
So I've worked for quite large law firms previously, and we just wanted to do something a little bit different because I think really we could see a couple of flaws in the larger law firms. And for us, our core focus, it's always got to be our clients, start to finish. That's it really, that they are our sole focus during that time. We didn't want something to be focused on billing, targets, what fee earners can and can't do. It was more about the experience for those clients and making it more accessible. So creating a modern way of working in a more modern firm that actually, everybody off the street could walk in and seek legal advice.
And is that challenging? But yeah, just in terms of, so you talk about having lower overheads, not large offices. How was it? I mean, did the pandemic come into it for you in terms of shaping your thinking, the lockdown working we all got used to?
Yeah, so it was massive for us with the pandemic. It showed us a world that could work remotely, it could all work virtually, everybody was quite happy to do that. And for us, our clients, because we see them sometimes when they're starting employment, during employment, at the end of employment, trying to fit in a meeting with a solicitor when they might be juggling work life, home life, it can be quite challenging. So actually, for me to say, just pop on a Teams call with me, it's fine. You don't have to come into an office. You don't have to drive and go and park your car somewhere and walk to our building. A lot of them are quite happy to do that. What we actually found as well, because the age range that we deal with it's huge, literally from 16 to 18, all the way up to retirement age. We tend to find that the older generation really want us to go to their house as well, which not many employment solicitors would do. It's typically your wills and probate that would go out to houses and do home visits, but we're more than happy to do that because we understand everybody's needs are different. And again, it's a way of keeping our costs down so that we can pass that saving on to our clients.
And that must be a big percentage of the market, potentially opened up to you there if sort of older people, disabled people need that kind of, home visits, I guess.
Yeah, massive. So particularly with discrimination and disability, I appreciate I've said it doesn't necessarily always have to be physical, but when it is a physical disability as well, they can be quite limited as to where they can go and how they can get there, when they can get there. They might need support from other people. And we've acted for quite a few clients where we said, don't worry, we'll come to you. And that's meant the world to them, just to think, I don't have to worry about how I'm going to get there. And that's really helped them just feel more at ease as well in their own home.
So what would you say then? Because it's a big debate, isn't it? I mean, certainly, every week on Legal Cheek, it seems there's some kind of article about, some big law firm trying to get everyone back into its expensive office so it's not been a big waste of money and rent. But what would you say to somebody in that camp of that debate about, who really does think lawyers need to be back in their offices?
It's not needed. I think when you're training, I think it's quite valuable to have that contact with other solicitors, just even hearing other solicitors on the phone, their telephone manner, how they deal with things. I think that you can learn a lot from that. And I certainly did, because I did my training kind of pre-COVID, so I had the benefit of that. But I think once you're at a point, you've qualified, you understand the telephone manner, you're quite comfortable with what you're doing, I don't think there's any need to be in the office permanently. I think there's still a place for it. I do. I think mental health wise as well, it can still be really good for people to get out, talk to other people, socialise as well. But I think actually you don't have to do it. And I certainly find I'm more productive working at home alone than I am in a big office where everybody's, how was your weekend? How was this? And you're thinking, I just need to get my head down now and get on with this piece of work.
Yeah, it's lovely to catch up, but please, I've got a deadline.
Yeah.
So as well as starting your journey in the law, as well as moving in employment law, you founded a company now quite early on in your career. Did you feel? I mean, there must have been so much you learned during that process. Where did you start?
Where did we start? It was quite a big journey, to be honest. And we've always, both myself and my business partner, we've always kind of thought, let's do it. But like you've just said, it is that question of where do we start? We don't even know. And I think, first of all, for me, it was resigning from my role because I couldn't take on this challenge, obviously, non-compete clauses whilst working for another firm. But time-wise, I physically couldn't do it either. It would have been too much. So that was the first step, really, of saying, when's the time for me to resign and step back? And when you've qualified,
feel like at that moment?
Yeah, and that when all you've worked for is to be a solicitor, and then you're going to go, do you know what? I'm just going to quit my job and walk away. That's a really big gamble. So we found the right time to do it just before we had his little girl, and I said, right, that's it. This is it now. It's now or never, because I don't think I was ever going to feel ready to do it.
And so you took the leap. What helped you take the leap? Because I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast might have come to you, Laura, even as career changes, or they might be wondering about making a leap, maybe not as big as yours, but maybe as big as yours. What kind of prompted you to make the leap in the end?
So I had my little boy. So my little boy at the time was 18 months old, and we were just about to have his little girl. And in my head, it was a decision of, do I go part-time and do I kind of put my career on pause? Do I take a career break? What do I do? And I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think you can have both. But the firms that I was working for at the time, it was very much I don't think I could have both there. I think I needed that work-life balance. And actually, believe it or not, starting our own company and starting our own firm has actually given me that.
Which will reassure a lot of people. That kind of entrepreneurship can actually take a burden off. So how do you go about it then? Once you've decided to make the leap and once you and your business partner are ready to start setting things up, I mean, what are the next steps then?
It's essentially the forms with the Solicitors Regulation Authority, the SRA. So it's completing the forms, and I make that sound really simple. Obviously, it's not. There's a lot of form filling. You have to prepare business plans. You have to provide forecasts, budgeting for everything like that. And that can be quite challenging when both myself and my business partner have never run a firm. He's actually an accountant, so the financial side was all taken care of. I was there to explain how the client files would be managed, how they would be secure, how they would all be dealt with. But there's still quite a lot of hoops to jump through. But actually, once we filled those forms in, it was a case of waiting a couple of months, couple of weeks to find out what the decision was. Because we set our business up as an ABS, an alternative business structure, because it's also owned by a non-lawyer, which is my partner. He's an accountant. Once all that had been kind of vetted and checked, it was then fairly straightforward. You do the usual register on Company's House, etc., and that was it. And
once you're set up and running, how do you find your clients?
Now that can be a challenge, because when you're in a larger firm, work just gets put on your desk. You might walk in on a Monday and you've got 3 new files there, and you think, great, that's my work for the week. Doesn't work like that, obviously, when it's your own. So at the start, it's about building your reputation. So there was lots of networking, and I say marketing, but I say that quite loosely because I'm no expert in marketing. As a solicitor, you don't get trained on how to market and pull in clients. You get trained how to service them. So that was quite challenging, and we've now hired somebody to help us with that. And it does get easier, and it's about building that pipeline. And what you find is that if we give great customer service, you get, oh, I've referred you on to so-and-so, I've referred you on to so-and-so. And actually it's word of mouth that gets a lot of work around. But yeah, it's really important to build that pipeline, and how you find it is it's just using your initiative and being proactive.
So give us some examples about what you did, because it sounds like you had to basically teach yourself marketing and teach yourself sort of client finding skills from scratch. Where did you go?
So, like I said, lots of networking events, and that was just to get my name out there. I didn't necessarily expect to achieve a lot of clients from there, but I thought it might be, I know somebody that could help, and kind of follow on from that. We did lots of, so I kind of previously, I've had lots of clients that I've dealt with in the past. And when we posted on LinkedIn, I actually had a lot of clients reach out and say, congratulations, this is amazing, this is fantastic, can't believe you've done this. And then they'd be like, should we meet up for a coffee? And you'd go meet up for a coffee with them, you'd have a chat. And again, with employment law, at that point in time, they might not have needed me. But what I found is a lot of them, they've come back to me because they've had another issue, or their auntie or their uncle's had an issue and they've come back to me. So I think for me, the most important thing that I think we've done is it's connecting with people. It's just making those connections.
That's fascinating. And I think a lot of people, I mean, you said the networking word before I did. People kind of, it makes people's skin crawl, doesn't it, sometimes in the law, this idea that you've got to go and schmooze. But yeah, that's so interesting. So you're saying, go and meet people, go and have a coffee. It doesn't need to have a purpose at that point, but it's a relationship to bank for when somebody does need your help. Yeah.
And a lot of our work now, it's so-and-so's recommended me, and you think, oh, I met them at that networking event, or I had a coffee with them, last year. But the fact that they've remembered and pointed you in my direction is great. And, the website's massively helped as well. That's been a huge thing. We've got great Google reviews. That really helps them, because type in solicitor near me, or whatever a lay person might type in. I don't know, when we do it on the other hand, what do we look at? We always look at reviews. Is it good? Do they have kind of good ratings? And I think that's really helped us.
Amazing. And so for those networking events as well, what are your tips to, a newly qualified solicitor, or even a law student who's going along to those? I mean, how have you got the most out of them?
It's be confident and be brave, because sometimes when you can walk in as newly qualified, you might find that there's a bit of a clique, or there's a group, or they all know each other, or they're all familiar with each other, but they've been where you've been. They've been the newbie in that group. And nobody's going to, turn their back and not talk to you. But that's what you feel like sometimes when you walk in, or you feel like you might be intruding on a conversation. But actually, it's nothing like that. And if you put yourself out there and you are confident with it, you will find that you'll walk in and you'll have the room all turn and go, oh, hi, Leah, how are you? How did that client get on last week? Oh, I sent somebody to you last week. And then you'll see the new person walk in the room and think, I was them a few weeks ago, but that's not me now.
That's really, really great advice. So now you're running the law firm. Is there anything that surprised you? Because you've been doing the law yourself. You've been a solicitor before, but now you're running a firm as well. What kind of surprises have there been down the line? I
think for me, and it's when you look at the larger firms, is actually solicitors are quite a small part in the firm, and you have finance, you have IT, you have marketing. You'd have a HR team dealing with your employees. You'd have a compliance team, everything like that. And the minute you start on your own, it's where's all that support gone? It's gone. It's disappeared, and you're taking on everything. And I think for me, I've always really appreciated what our secretaries do for us, but especially when we started on our own, it was very much I'm doing this on my own now. I'm opening client files on my own. I'm now raising the invoices on my own. And I think you do probably take for granted when you work in a firm where you get that support, how long that process can take. But actually how vital it is, because if there ever was a dispute, or a client is ever unhappy, it always tends to fall back on the initial setup of the relationship, what was said, what are the terms. So I think for me that was probably I'm not going to say the biggest shock, but I think it was we don't have that support team in place now, and that was challenging.
Yeah, always value your support staff, your secretaries.
Yeah, 100%.
Worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, they're invaluable.
Yeah. Now, you studied at the University of Law, LLB, and then you completed your LPC. Talk me through your time at the university. How did it shape the lawyer you are today?
Yeah, so I absolutely loved ULaw. I actually started a different university and left after a couple of months because it wasn't for me. It was purely about academics. And I just felt like something was missing, that this isn't what I thought it would be. And I started ULaw and thought, this is what it's supposed to be like. And it was, you got so much more practical insight into what the legal world is like, what working in a law firm is like. Because you're taught, or particularly myself, I was taught by kind of solicitors or ex-solicitors or barristers, people in the legal world, where it would very much be, this is the kind of the academic side of it, this is in theory, but they would then also say, but in practice, this is how it would work. And the practice side of it might not be what you write in your exams, but that's what equips you to walk into a firm and go, I already know that, I'm good with that, I can deal with this.
And
it's massive.
So having the former practitioners teaching you was really a really important part of that. Was there anyone in particular who you remember just being an inspiration while you were here?
Yeah, there was lots of them. They were all fantastic. But I mean, Jane, Jerry, there was Patrick, Phillida. They were all absolutely fantastic. And what was really nice is you'd walk into a workshop or a seminar, and you would know that actually whoever was teaching you, it was going to be great, and you could always ask as many questions as you wanted. No question was too stupid. They were always really kind of welcoming and just open, really warm and open.
And what advice for current students who are listening? Is there anything that you wish you'd known back then? Anything that you wish you'd done that you never got to? Or what advice would you have for our current students?
I think in terms of what I wish I'd done and known, it was about making sure you do ask those questions, because again, law can feel quite scary, it can feel quite intimidating sometimes, and you might think, I don't want to ask that question. And I remember starting as a paralegal at a firm at the same time I was at University of Law, and lawyers kept banding this word around whip, and I'm thinking, what is whip? I have no idea, but I daren't ask. And I felt more comfortable to walk up to my tutors and say, you're going to have to help me with some of this terminology because I'm getting lost. And I was too nervous to ask the solicitors and lawyers that I was working with at the time. And I remember one of them in particular taking the time to sit me down and say, right, tell me everything that it is. Tell me every term that you want to know, and I'll talk through it with you. And that person in particular had their bag ready to walk out of the door and was ready to sit down and help me. So ask the questions, don't wait, just ask them.
And that just making time for you to answer. And I bet you almost, those notes will have seen you through ever since.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I always, whip now when we talk about it, I always think about that particular tutor who said to me, this is what it is and this is how it works. Right, okay,
and
I totally get it now. So work in progress. So work that you've not quite billed yet, but you've put on the ledger.
There we go. So you can have that one for free. But do ask if you
by that explanation as well.
So that's your university days. Obviously, then lead you into your legal career. One thing that you've talked a lot about, both in this interview and on your LinkedIn profile, is your family, and they're clearly really important to you. And you talk about them a lot, actually. And it seems to, is it fair to say it's quite important to you that your family are kind of front and center in your kind of corporate identity, and that it's important to make time for kind of work-life balance discussions and that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. My kids are my number one priority, always have been, always will be. But that doesn't mean to say that work also isn't up there and can't be up there. And I do have a great balance. I drop my kids off every morning, I pick my kids up every evening, I'm there at sports days, doctor's appointments, whatever it is that they've got going on, I will be there, and I will work my diary around it. But I also work with some fantastic clients that also understand that, and if one of them's ill, all my clients are fully appreciative that everybody has a life outside of work as well. And without their support, I would really struggle to do what I do.
And I guess having that attitude's one thing. And then what practical steps do you have to take within the business to make sure that people can make time for their families in that way?
Yeah, so it is about kind of protected time. And I'm not saying I'm uncontactable before 8:30, because I absolutely am. And again, it's just that protecting my time in the afternoon, so that actually I need to be away from the office at 4:30 to pick my little ones up. So it's, maybe put my last meeting in at 3, 3:30, and then I've just got that time to finish up, tidy everything up, and get myself home to focus on my kids for a little bit. But it's, after 4 o'clock until 7 o'clock, that's my time for them. 3 hours a day is just kind of protected. I don't do anything with any clients at that time.
And would it have been as easy to do that had you still been working for a firm? No, definitely not, because like I said, I can pick my laptop back up at 7, 8 o'clock. That's absolutely fine. But with a firm, it's very much, we have core hours. We want you to work 9 till 5, let's say. And that will prove quite challenging for both myself and my partner, who both work, full time. We both have quite demanding jobs. And I do say, my children are in nursery, and nursery's got its place, but I also don't want my children in nursery, from 7 a.m. in the morning until 6 p.m. in the evening, and I don't want to miss out on what they're doing. So I think I would have really struggled. And why do you think it is? I mean, do you think it's the case that lots of firms don't recognise the importance of this? And if so, why do you think that's the case?
I think there's been a big shift, and I do think firms are seeing it more. And I think for me, I think there's an expectation on the woman that, she picks the kids up, she drops the kids off, she deals with them when they're poorly, and that's absolutely fine. But I didn't want to go part-time in my career, and I didn't want to take that step back. But there was no other alternative at the time, or what didn't feel like there was another alternative, because my partner also didn't want to go part-time. So actually, my firm would have been fully supportive of me reducing my hours, making a flexible working request, absolutely fine with that. But for me, that wasn't the solution, because I still wanted to work and I still wanted the career and to progress. I didn't want to step back.
It's really interesting, and you've taken a step that gives you that flexibility and gives you that ownership. If there are people listening who don't have the kind of luxury of, not luxury, but who don't have the ability to take control in that way, maybe they are employed, maybe they are in a firm, what can they do, do you reckon, to sort of start to carve out a bit of protection like you've described?
I think it is making it known from the outset. And I think actually, you sit down with your employer and say, look, my kids are my absolute, number one priority. No employer is going to think badly of you for that. I think everybody's kids are their priority. But I think if you just speak to them and communicate and say, look, this is what I need, and actually have an open conversation with your employer, and they might say, that's fine, but this is what I need from you. As long as you do 8 hours of work a day, I don't particularly care when those times are. Do what works for you. And I think you actually get a lot more out of your employees like that. With our employees, we're very much like that, as to, here's a number of hours, you do it when you need to do it. We understand people have doctor's appointments, life gets in the way. We totally understand that.
And indeed, as an employment lawyer, that kind of consideration, that kind of respect must be something, that you see either, often in its absence in some of your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Your family sound like they're such a source of inspiration for you. How did they support you through this whole transition into setting your own firm up?
Yeah, so I think they've always been supportive. From a really young age, I knew what I wanted to do. So it was kind of she's going to do it. And then obviously dropped out of one uni. And I think that my family thought, do you know what, maybe she's not going to do this now and she's not going to go back. But I did, and I made it. And I think that for them, there was actually a lot of doubt in their minds, I think, when I had my first child, as to, is this going to stop her? Because again, I think it's that expectation of it's all on the woman in the family. So I think then when I kind of said, no, actually, he will go to nursery, I will go back to work, and, we can do this. Without their support as well and help, when they're poorly, and helping me pick them up and do things with the children, I couldn't have done it.
Absolutely. So your family have been a huge rock then, by the sounds of it. Have you, more broadly, have you ever had a mentor? Has anybody mentored you? Who sort of inspired you through your legal journey?
Yeah, so there's one person in particular. So I started my first paralegal job when I was at University of Law, and she was fantastic. I actually worked at a law firm in Nottingham at the time. She owns and runs her own firm down in Nottingham, and she said, come on, get in, let's do some work. And actually, sometimes just getting your foot in the door of a firm can be really difficult, and even just getting work experience. So to kind of just walk in there and get that was fantastic. I did 4 weeks with her, and then she offered me a job at the end of it, which I wasn't expecting at all. But I took the job, loved it. Me and her stayed in contact even then when I left her and went to a larger firm. We've always stayed in contact. She's always helped me, always checked in on me. And then when we went to set up My Law Solicitors, I reached out to her and said, I need some help. Where do I start? What do I do? And she was fantastic guiding me through it. She's been there, she's done that. And again, we wouldn't have been able to probably have got to where we've got to without her, because just having those useful pieces of information, do it like this and do it like that, it's been invaluable.
What does she make of the firm now?
Oh, so she loves it. She absolutely loves it. She loves the model that we've set up. She thinks it's fantastic. We work really closely as well, so people would think she actually has an employment law firm as well, so people would think, oh, you're in competition. We're totally not. We're looking for different clients, and we actually refer work to each other quite a lot of the time, and it's just a great relationship, and it's somebody to bounce ideas off as well, who's in the same boat.
What advice would you give to a young solicitor just starting now? Indeed, what advice would you give to your younger self just embarking on this legal journey?
So I think for me, it's kind of, you start uni and you have this, I'm going to get my degree, I'm then going to do my LPC, I'm then going to qualify and be a solicitor. And that's ultimately your end goal at that point. And I was so fixated and focused on that, I probably missed the journey. It was very much I'm nearly there, I'm nearly there, I'm nearly there. And I remember the day that I qualified as a solicitor, nothing changed. I got a practicing certificate from the SRA that said you can now practice as a solicitor. It was very much oh, okay, that was quite underwhelming. There's no kind of big cannons that go off behind you, no big balloons, and you don't walk around with this badge on your head and you think that wasn't what I maybe thought it would feel like. So I think for me it's about enjoying the journey more, because it's good to have an idea where you want to be, but it's not always about just when you get there, because you might be disappointed. Yes, I'm very proud of what I've done, and anybody should be, whatever they do, but enjoy how you get there as well. And we're trying, making a point with this law firm of enjoying it from day one, enjoy the ups and downs, because hopefully one day we might have 10 staff, it might be a fantastic firm, we'll be growing, and you think, oh, we did that, but I can't really remember how we got there, and that's not what I want to do.
Amazing. Fantastic advice. And thank you so much again for sharing your insights with us today. Thank you for sharing your story of founding My Law. I'm sure you'll have inspired lots of our listeners. And if you would like to learn more about the University of Law, you can do so. Visit law.ac.uk. And if you enjoyed this podcast, do also follow us on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Share us with your friends, share us with your classmates, and we'll keep you up to date when a new episode is live. Thank you again, Leah, and goodbye.
Thank you.